Hey everyone, my name is Erik Cottrell. I am one of the Agile transformation coaches with Agile Velocity. We're the creators of the Path to Agility transformation framework, and I'm really pleased to talk with you today about how to go about unlocking innovation in your organization. I was recently talking to a CTO who said he understands and knows that his people are smart and talented, they're hardworking and they're dedicated. And his question was, how do I unlock the potential of my organization? And it's a great question. And I think it's something that a lot of the leaders do wrestle with and think a lot about in terms of being able to free up their people to be their best and to solve really challenging and important problems for their customers. So we're going to walk through that today. We're going to use the Path to Agility to give us a perspective from our point of view as to how you can build those capabilities. I'm going to use Miro to help navigate the conversation together. So if you're unfamiliar with Miro, it's an interactive whiteboarding space, and it allows us to share things together and work together collaboratively. It's really it's an impressive tool. And so as you think about unlocking innovation in your organization, we're going to be asking the question, what needs to be true? That's a question we ask a lot when somebody doesn't have something that they want, and it gives us a way to think very clearly about what needs to happen in order to make something true. And so for us, when it comes to the Path to Agility, we believe that there are typically business outcomes that are driving the whole point of doing an Agile transformation. An Agile transformation shouldn't be detached from actual business results and business outcomes. And so there are 9 that are fairly common. And in your case, you might be looking at innovation. And so what's really, I think, part and parcel of how we operate with the Path to Agility is that we want to start with clarity, both clarity of what's in scope right now, what are we focusing on right now, and what are we dedicated to? And then also, what does that mean? Have we identified both the focus and have we identified what good looks like? And so we identify innovation here, but then we go to the next level, which is we define what we mean by innovation. And you can read this for yourself, or I'll go ahead and read it out loud. New ideas, creative thoughts, novel imaginations provide better solutions to meet new requirements, unarticulated needs, or known market needs. And so the question becomes, how do we unlock that capability of allowing new ideas and creative thoughts and just novel imaginations to become actual solutions that meet our customers' needs? And how do we know that we have that? And so for us, we begin with, first of all, acknowledging the fact that when we do an Agile transformation or you're trying to achieve a business result, it's really a brave thing to say, we are going to focus on an area and we're going to know what good looks like. And of course, we would work with you in this case if you wanted to change what innovation means for your organization. However, as leaders, it's a real gift to give your people clarity about where we're going. And you might be saying, here's our aim, here's what good looks like, and now we need to go build the steps to get there. And so the first thing that needs to be true is we need to have clarity of where we're going, and we need to have clarity of what good looks like. And so we're going to talk a little bit now about kind of how that works in real life, because it's great to say we have clarity of what we're after and we have a definition of what good looks like. But what happens, and I think there's a mental thing that happens, is that we're in the current status quo, right? We are where we are today with what we have today. And we know that's not sufficient. And so we want to be able to go up, right? We want to be able to achieve something and to have something as an organization. And what I see a lot, and I think we can all appreciate this, is that we want to start here. Like, we're not great, so let's find the straightest path to being able to get what we want. And we sometimes hope that, we have fair winds and calm seas, and we're gonna get there pretty easily. But the reality, when we do any kind of change, is that it's difficult. And a quote by Peter Drucker is, if you want anything new, you need to stop doing something old. And so if you want the new experience, the new and improved status quo, chances are you're going to have to stop doing something at the status quo of what's happening today, and you're going to have to start to think a little differently about what's going to happen. And so what I would encourage you to consider is understanding that when you begin your transformation, to an innovative organization, you might find that you start off well and then something happens. You actually find that when people begin to realize that they're going to have to change mindset, they're going to have to change their language and learn new terms perhaps, and they're going to have to change their behavior, you run into something we call chaos and resistance. And all of a sudden you have this momentum and people are excited, they're with you, and then it ebbs because people all of a sudden realize, oh, things are really different. Things are about to change. The good news is, and the path to agility can certainly help with this, is that when they begin to learn what the new modes of working are, when they begin to understand the new mindsets, what can then begin to happen is that they can begin to bounce from this low and begin to experience a resurgence, and all of a sudden you get lift and momentum towards the outcome. But that dip there, we refer to that a lot as chaos and resistance, is very real. And a lot of transformations get stuck right there, whether they're big transformations or small transformations. It could be personal transformations where we're trying to change something ourselves. We all know that this is real. So what needs to be true is, as leaders, I think it's important for us, and it's a good opportunity for us to realize that as we hit this new status quo and we begin to identify ways that we're improving and getting better and so forth, that there's going to be some time the organization is going to have to work through this sort of process. And that's okay, it's normal. And so for us, what needs to be true is leaders need to appreciate the fact that change is disruptive internally, and we want to make sure that we get clarity about that. Now, that just so happens to align to what we call the path to agility, which is a framework for us to be able to look at what's happening in an organization when they're trying to do an agile transformation. And we look across 5 stages that we see companies go through as they traverse the change curve here. And it's important, and we're not going to talk in detail about that today, but you do change and you're able to hit your momentum as the teams become more predictable. They can know what's expected of them. They know how to operate. They know how other people are going to treat them. They know essentially what the ground rules are and how they participate. So there's 5 stages, and then there's 3 levels, and we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But I first wanted to point something out, and I think it bears repeating, and leaders don't hear this a lot. And that is, if you have chosen to say, we're going to be an innovative organization, you're taking a big bet, and you're making a stake, and you're saying, we're going to go do this. And I came across this quote. It's from Readwise sent it to me one morning because it's a highlight that I had in this book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, The Difference and Why It Matters by Richard Rummel. And this quote, I think, is spot on for the leader who's trying to attain this new status quo. The quote says, "A talented leader identifies the 1 or 2 critical issues in the situation, the pivot points that can multiply the effectiveness of effort, and then focuses and concentrates action and resources on them." So you've already done a good job. You are one of the talented leaders by saying, we have identified that innovation is something we want to unlock. We have identified and defined what good looks like. Awesome. That is a critical issue, and you've identified a pivot point. We want innovation. It can multiply the value of what you're creating. Now comes the hard work and the important work of saying, well, what is necessary for us to concentrate and focus our effort to be able to make innovation real? So the other question becomes, what needs to be true? And so in the path to agility, we actually create a landscape for you. And you'll notice that there are similarities to the previous image I showed you. We have the 5 stages at the top, and on the left-hand side, we have 3 different levels. We're going to drill into that in just a second. But what we've done here is we've said, okay, if innovation is what you want to have in your organization, it's your new status quo, it's the new good. What we've done is said there are agility outcomes, and those agility outcomes, I look at them, and I'll just put this on here. I would call them really competencies that you can say you can trust in and know that those competencies are in place in your organization. If you have that, you have not only competencies, I think those competencies then turn into competitive advantages. So by having these competencies and these agile outcomes in your organization, you are able to achieve innovation. And remember, we had 9 business outcomes. And so by building this in your organization, if you decide you want to focus on something else, you've achieved a good level of innovation in your organization and you need to focus on something else, you already have the capabilities built in, which gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more speed. So this is a map, a landscape, if you will, of the different areas to focus on. And the items that are checked with the green, for example, team empowerment and agile leadership. Today, we're going to talk about team empowerment. Those are 2 important agile outcomes that are necessary to be able to make innovation true in your organization. You'll notice there are 3 levels on the left-hand side. There's the org level, there's a system level, and there is the team level. And so each one of these is very important and often overlooked when it comes to being able to drive change in an organization. And so I want to call these out because I think they matter. And you may be able to use that right now in this model as a diagnostic. Even if you don't call us or you don't engage us, you might be able to find that as you think about diagnosing where challenges are, by using this approach, you'll find some benefit. So each one of these stages is comprised of certain things. And in this case, the org level is one where leadership resides, right? It's where the people who are guiding the company, giving direction, supporting the company, and providing a path forward. There's also strategy at this level. And that's very important. Finance is a massive one because many of us are driven by the financial goals that we have. And so that is happening at the org level as well. You also find HR and people items here. And so this is where the way that we are organized and focus on our people is very important. And then lastly, and certainly it's not exhaustive, but importantly is culture. So culture resides at this level. And culture is, really how things really are here, not what we say they are, but how things really get done. And so all of those facets make up the org level. And it's important when we begin to look at the current status quo and the new status quo to recognize there's work to be done at the org level and across these different facets. All right, so let's talk next about the system level. And the system level is a little simpler. It's a team of teams. It's where your multiple teams come together to collaborate and communicate and work together. We find a lot that we're set up functionally. So teams are built around competence. Like we have our middle tier team, we've got our back end team, we've got our UX folks, and we've got testers over here. And so things are broken out by function, but they're not necessarily in teams that are functioning together towards a common goal. And so this might be today for you, might be departments, and then it might also be silos, right? So for us, we work really hard to address the silos issues, but what we want is a team of teams. This is where the value is created as teams collaborate together to get things created and things built. And then down at the bottom, the teams, this is an important one. These are the powerhouse of any kind of result and transformation. This is what we're trying to unlock. And so we think about teams being stable, empowered, and cross-functional. And what that means simply is that the people stay on the same team. They know who their partners are. They know what their roles are. They know how they're supposed to function. They have agreements about how they get work done. They are empowered, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today, which is leadership at this org level has said, we want you guys to go become an innovative organization and an innovative team. And so we need as leaders to know what it is that you require to go be innovative. But we are empowering you to go solve your problems and to help solve our customer problems. And then lastly is cross-functional. You mentioned that in the team of teams. What we want to build ideally are teams that are independently able to create value by themselves and actually get that value to the customer without any interference, without any dependencies. And that's obviously a very big goal for a lot of companies, but that's the aim. And so at each of these three levels, org, system, and team, you can say, well, if I think about my organization, I might see some hot spots at the org level and the team level and the system level, or you might be able to start to diagnose where you see some opportunities to get better. All right, so what we're going to do today, though, is that we're going to say, okay, well, how do we concentrate our effort, right? How do we take the good stuff that we have created and how do we begin to really nail it down? And how do we begin to make sense of what the work is to go do? What needs to be true next? So in this case, we've identified the Agile outcomes or the competencies that we know we need in the organization. So that's good. We can prioritize which ones we work on first. And let's say we're going to work on team empowerment. Now what, right? What needs to be true now? Well, the reality is that a lot of us, we don't have time to think through all of the implications of building these capabilities in our teams. And so that's why we created the Path to Agility, is because we kept coming across these consistent challenges and opportunities to help our customers by defining then what is the concentrated areas of work to be done to be able to give us those great competencies that can allow us to become more innovative. So I mentioned team empowerment. We want our teams to be empowered, and that means that leadership has to empower them. So what does that look like? And so much like we did with the innovation business outcome, we defined it, and we can clarify it. We're going to do that now at the team empowerment level. So at the Agile outcome level, we want to make sure that we're really clear about what's in focus. And so what we're doing here is that we are fostering self-organizing teams where ownership is transferred from management to team. Now, there's a lot we can unpack here, but what I really want to focus on is that we are transferring ownership from management to the teams. Okay, so that's two really big things, because leadership then has to say, you are enabled, you are empowered, and you have ownership to go solve these big, challenging customer problems. That's awesome, right? Sounds great, or it might sound terrifying depending on where you're at. But this is what's true. Innovative organizations have teams that are able to go solve their problems. And so what we've done is we've identified now the capabilities underneath team empowerment that we would say would give us confidence that you have what you need to be able to empower your teams. And those three things are team responsibility, team autonomy, and a culture of learning. And so each one of those then breaks down into smaller and more focused areas. And so we're going to talk about team responsibility here. Team responsibility then, in the same way, we identify again what it is that we mean when we say team responsibility. So let's take a look at that for just a moment. So leaders and managers are shifting their expectations from individual performance and outcomes to supporting and encouraging whole team performance. Now, that's a radical way of looking at things. And so we're moving from individual performance, right? Individual performance, and we're moving now to encouraging whole team performance. And that is a significant leap for a lot of organizations. But that way, what happens is you are enabling teams to go solve their problems and to wrestle with things in ways that can be really helpful for them. And when you have all of your teams operating this way, you magnify and compound the amount of problem solving in your organization, and you're putting that to work at the point of the issue. And so you are beginning to unlock the reality of teams motivated, focused, and held accountable for delivering business outcomes themselves. So I have blurred out a few of the acceptance criteria, but now what we want to do is we want to say, okay, well, what does good look like? How do we know that we've achieved these things? And so one of the things I would be looking for if I were to come into your organization is that I would be looking for how the leaders are interacting with their teams and how they are holding those teams responsible for maximizing the business value that they deliver, right? And we know from an agility perspective that small batches that are done, that get put in front of the customer in a shippable product, like we can get some learning from that. Like it's really valuable. So the question becomes, how do we begin to make that true, right? So what needs to be true? Well, we need to begin to shift our thinking from it's all individual heroics to we're going to empower teams, and we're going to make sure that leaders are keeping the eye on the ball about business value. And the teams are going to be thinking about, well, how do they do that? So one of the really cool things about the Path to Agility is it allows you to get a lot of benefit by understanding kind of how all of the different components fit together. And so we're going to actually tie this team responsibility a little bit to a culture of learning. And this might be something you could go try with your own teams. So one of the things I love about agility is that it's an empirical process model, which means that we're able to go inspect and adapt. We deal in facts. We deal in the reality of our situation. We're not living in fantasy, and we begin to learn. We're building an environment where we're going to accelerate our learning so that we can get better all the time. And so one of the things that I think is true and needs to be true to unlock the capability of innovation in your organization is I think leaders can go to their teams in ways that are fundamentally different than they might today. And one of those ways is to go and to ask the team to solicit from them what needs to be true for you to achieve something. And so my challenge to you would be, whether it's this or some other thing that you're working on, whether it's team empowerment or not, but if it were team empowerment, you could go to your team and you could ask them a simple question. And you have to go to them with sincerity. You have to be authentic. You have to be oriented towards solving whatever comes up out of this conversation, but you could ask them a question. You could give them all, they could, if they're still remote, they can write it down on a sticky note or a piece of paper and where they are. And you could just ask them, hey folks, what needs to be true for this team to maximize business value? And you could allow them to answer. And you could listen to what they say, or you could say, hey, what needs to be true for you to deliver incrementally, right? And there, any question or anything that you're observing, you could go to them and you could say, what needs to be true for you all to be able to make this reality? And so that allows there to be this conversation between leadership, that org level and the team level, or even the team of team levels at the system. You're able to have a conversation about, hey, we're aiming for this great outcome, right? We know that we want to be able to achieve this great new improved status quo. We're going to have some challenges. So tell me now, what needs to be true for you to go from our current status quo to our ideal status quo? And they might say, we need some important things, like we might need test environments. We might need closer access to our customers. We need to be able to talk to them directly, or whatever they might need becomes now the work that the leadership does to make sure those teams have that, to remove the friction, the things that are in the team's way, so that they can become innovators themselves because they're empowered. And you are confident that they have those skills because you can use the path to agility to step through all the way down to a very detailed level. So thank you for watching and following along. The next video is going to be talking about agile leadership, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then after that, we're going to talk about whole org agility, which is a lot of fun because it's not just about technology and it's not just about product. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for watching. If you'd like to learn a little bit more, you can go to pathtoagility.com, or you can send an email to info@pathtoagility. Thanks for joining along, and all the best to you and your teams. Cheers.